The 100% Wild podcast is brought to you by OnX Hunt, the nation's #1 GPS hunting app. Download today in the Google Play and App Store.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast. I'm billionaire and tech mogul Tony Stark.
And I'm your boss for the day, Bill Lumbergh.
I hate Lumbergh.
I'm going to need you to work Saturday, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine.
Maybe Sunday. Okay.
I don't have anything going on anyways.
Thanks.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
And if Halloween. You're listening to this and you're not watching it, you're missing out because we're dressed up for Halloween today. And these jokes only make sense if you see us.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how did you source your outfit?
Amazon.
Yeah?
Yeah, literally.
So did you search for Bill Lumbergh outfit?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Every single piece this is custom Bill Lumbergh right here.
Jeez.
That's right. If I really wanted to commit, I would have shaved the beard, but I was not willing to go into November with a clean shaven face.
Yeah. Believe me, I thought about it last night as I was cutting this Tony Stark Iron Man beard in. It's like, this is going to suck when I go out deer hunting.
We were talking about it. It looks really douchey if you aren't Tony Stark. So
hopefully I win a prize today in the costume contest.
That's right.
Because I went a long way for this.
All right. Well, so obviously hunting's heating up. Tons of encounters. You killed a couple does this past weekend. We got lots to catch up on, but we got a really special guest with us and we wanted to jump into it kind of right away. And then we'll probably, once we get done with our question of the day and this guest departs, we'll probably catch up a little bit at the end of the podcast this time. So
we have a superhero joining us, Jeff Lindsey, dressed up as Jeff Lindsey from the Lindsey Way. How are you, man?
Good, man. How you guys doing?
Doing good, buddy.
We're good. Yeah. Thanks for hopping in and joining us. We appreciate it.
He is a Superman because he was in Iowa, Illinois. You were in the Midwest just yesterday.
Yeah. Illinois to Iowa. Now I'm in Georgia.
He's flying everywhere, man. He's a superhero. And
I'd save a lot of money if I had a superpower, which is flying around. That would be great.
Yeah, it would be great. But you do have a superpower. It's knowing how to kill big deer everywhere you go. That's your superpower.
Some years, not this year.
Do you have any good prospects this year?
Yeah, I got one really big deer. I'm hunting a big typical buck, call him Big Chocolate, and he's just kind of consumed my mind. And I really can't think. If I go to Illinois, I went to South Dakota duck hunting, I can't go anywhere without thinking about this deer. And then he pops up on my trail cam, and our cellular trail cams. They're great, but they can drive you crazy. Yeah. Deer drive you crazy, but instead of checking your trail cam a couple of days later, now that you're checking them when you're hunting different spots, I mean, it's driving me nuts right now. But I think I'll get him. I hope I get him. I'm really dedicating my season to this buck. So let's hope it works out.
It's an interesting thing about the cell cameras because it's one of those deals where you could kind of almost hurt yourself by having too much information, chasing your tail, jumping around. And you can never have too much information, I guess, but you do have to be smart about how you take that info and make your choices and where you're hunting and when, because you could be jumping around, I got daylight over here. I got to go over here. Oh no, he showed up back where I was over there. I mean, you got to be kind of smart about.
You got to be consistent. That's what trail cameras will make you do is just bounce around. And, I don't guess I've ever been diagnosed with, ADD, but I do feel like when I'm hunting, that's kind of like, I should have been over here. And, you're always a Monday morning quarterback as a deer hunter. I should have went there. And then when you go check the trail cams 3 or 4 days later, you're like, well, okay, I don't remember where I was that day. But when you're sitting there hunting and then you were deciding over 2 food plots and then he is in the other one while you're sitting in 1.5 mile away, it can be anxiety or whatever you want to call it. It can be. Yeah. It can work against you a little bit if you can't just keep all your ducks in a row.
Yeah. There's actually emerging research right now that there's a guy that wrote a book called The Paradox of Choice. And it's all about how, because we're faced, like when we were kids, if you wanted to create a mixtape or burn a CD, it's like you got to pick 18 of the best songs. Now you don't really generally have to choose. You just get everything. But we're
get it all,
yeah. In our time right now, we have so much access to information that it gives us way too many options, and you end up almost paralyzed.
If you aren't a decision maker, it can literally stop you in your tracks. You got to be able to take the info,
Yep.
process, and make a decision.
And you have to be okay with a less than optimal outcome. Like it's hard when you know you're sitting here and then you check your trail cam and you had pictures of a good deer that was in front of a stand you thought about sitting in. Like that kind of stuff can drive you nuts.
It's been happening to me all season. So
the story is sounding very familiar to me right now. We can talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Matt doing crazy things. He's taking mounts off the wall and carrying them to the field.
Yeah, a guy was like, I wish I had money to take a 160-inch mount and just put it on a decoy. And I replied, I was like, well, it was about a 135. And he's like, well, still,
when you're desperate, you'll do anything.
Yeah, you got all these mounts. I was like, I only actually have 5 shoulder mounts. And that's a lot, I understand. But for some people, that's not a lot. And
sure.
So it was a deer that meant something to me, but I want to kill this bigger deer a lot more than I want that mount. So I was willing to make the choice.
Yeah, that's my favorite 3 words on social media. Must be nice.
Yeah. So it is what it is. But, I just had a chuckle because if I would have said, say I took a hero picture with that deer and called it a 160, everybody would have been like, oh, it's a 130, it's a 135. Yeah. So here I put it on this decoy and everybody's like, it's a 160. I was like, it's a 135.
When you guys see people estimating deer scores online, what's your plus or minus on that?
I'm not the best at it to begin with. So I'm never the first one to say. I would never go out and just say, oh, he's a 130 or he's a 180 or he's a 160. I generally have an idea if he's in the 50s, if he's in the 60s, if he's a boot or whatever. But, a guy like Jeff, I'm sure has a little bit better insight on it. He's used to measuring them more than I am. But I try just not to comment, maybe he is. I don't know.
It's a nice deer.
There's so many things with the way that you could take pictures. You really don't ever know.
100%.
Yeah, we're taking pictures of all the different lenses out there that some of these guys are using. But at the end of the day, I think you just realize that, if I were to sit down with a professional scorer, and I've scored hundreds of deer, but there would be things that I would be doing wrong. I always can get within a couple of inches of a professional scorer, but a certified, BNC scorer, but they would say, no, you need to do it like this, you do it like that. And so I think the average person just doesn't know the correct way to score a deer, and no fault of their own. It's just not like there's a class available. We can all go get certified. So I think there's something like that. You hook a buck up to a scale, he weighs 280 pounds. That's it. All the scales are pretty consistent, I would think. But, when you give somebody a tape, and just let them get after it, anything can happen.
Yeah. I usually look to see how far outside the ears, how tall the tines are, like the G3s and the 4s, and not just the 1s and the 2s, and then how much mass they have. And that's how I try to make my decision on, I think he's about X or whatever.
Sure.
Mass is usually the thing that I try to look for because it usually says age, with it.
Yeah. And even Mark has said it's a little hard if you don't get a good look at the body and know kind of what the body size is relative to the rack. You could have a big body deer that kind of dwarfs its own rack, but the rack is still pretty big.
Yeah.
There's way too many factors to be consistent on it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So big chocolate,
big sexy.
He's big typical, biggest typical I'd probably ever kill in my life if I can get him killed. But
saying something.
Wow. He survived from EHD, and he's a fighter. He's 7.5, which is the age I love to hunt whitetails. Once they get to 7, I feel like they have left no meat on the table. They're as old as they're as big as they're going to get. At least that's from our history of growing deer. And when they reach that magical age, that's as big as they're going to get. And he did blow. Almost shot him 2 years ago. Decided to let him go one more year, and then this year it's just like he's world class. So let's hope I can get him killed.
I don't know that I've even ever seen a 7.5-year-old buck in the wild, let alone like what. I was doing some processing of deer on Sunday night and Monday night and last night, like a lot of deer meat to process. What does a 7.5-year-old buck taste like, Jeff?
Man, you're probably not wanting to make deer steaks out of them. Most all the deer we eat, we're grinding up, or we're making jerky, sticks, summer sausage, or our favorite thing is cube steak, and you're tenderizing the back straps or cuts off the hindquarters and stuff. So the way we eat them, I can't tell a huge difference, between a yearling or a 7 or 8 year old buck. That being said, if the 2 pieces of meat are laying there, I'm getting the yearling all day long. But
Sure.
I say that all the time about elk. Every year we go out there and we shoot elk, and we're shooting these old, 7, 8, 10-year-old bulls. One year I want to go shoot a 1.5-year-old cow, because that's all we eat. Not all we eat, but the majority of our ground meat is venison or deer. And so it's typically these older animals. And so I would love just to go shoot a 1.5-year-old elk, a cow, and eat that for a change. I don't know. I can tell a difference, but you can't help but think about that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I've been saying to Tim, and I've given him some of my elk meat, and it just, and this bull, they thought he was 12, 14 years old, but
Wow.
I just didn't think it tasted very good. I know it's a very unpopular thing to say, and maybe I'm a horrible cook.
It's probably good to get that out there and just be honest, because
I could not. It was real sagey, and I just couldn't make it taste good. Now, like Trevor Walker, who used to work for us, he made for a Christmas party or something. He took,
he was like a roast,
and it tasted awesome. I couldn't believe how good it tasted. And then I did his recipe, and then it tasted like you know what? I was like, God, what? So maybe it is a little bit me, but I don't know. Every time we made it, every time we tried, I was like, God, just something about this I can't quite get into.
Ray's barbecue sauce.
The ground side of it.
The ground side, we've done a lot of chili and any lasagna and stuff like that, and I could still taste quite a bit of sage to it. I don't know. Like I said,
it might just be that area you're hunting. That was what, a Utah bull?
That was northern Utah. Yeah. So anyhow, I'd like to try, because I always see you guys like make like stroganoff with it and like, all kinds of yummy stuff. And I'm like, man, that looks good. And I tried it. I'm like, whoa, this was not good when I made it.
I have to find that I have to give myself maybe a day or two after I process the animal, because I've got kind of the smell on my nostrils and on my hands and
fingernails.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you go to eat something, you're like, I caught a whiff of my dough from last night that I processed. And
you can't do that. And it's also better if someone else cooks it. I mean, that is a proven fact. You're going to enjoy it more, especially on something you just processed.
Man, that's a toss up at my house, because my wife is super intimidated by venison. It's hard.
All right. Well, let's get into this question of the day, shall we?
Yeah.
All right.
We're going to delve into some ethical territory with our buddy Rob.
All right. The question of the day is brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here.
I have an ethical question. About 6 months ago, I purchased a piece of property for hunting. During hunting season this year, I met my neighbor who is also a hunter. He tried to explain to me how I was hunting my property wrong and that I was bothering him.
Sounds like a great guy.
However, the problem is that he is hunting on the property line. He had built a hunting hut, which is about 20 yards from our property line, and which faces my property. He also has been all over my property because has told me that he has hunted my property for probably the last 15 years because the previous owner could not regulate who was going in and out of the property. And also there were trees cut down on my side of the property line. So his shooting house, his hunting hut, could see the hillside a little bit better.
Lanes to shoot through. I mean,
so to be a good neighbor, to be a good hunter, how do you handle this?
I'm arrested
from keeping your neighbor off of your property.
Thank you,
Man.
Rob. And
I'm glad that we had Jeff on this podcast to say his thoughts, so I don't get in trouble.
I'm glad you guys gave me a good fat softball question here.
This poor guy, I feel for him. Jeez.
Yeah, he's got more issues than just the one that we're talking about. But I guess your first thing, and we've had neighbors. Probably I got worse stories than this. Me and my dad were telling a couple guys about it yesterday. But, our motto is you're going to win more flies with honey than vinegar. You keep your friends close, your enemies closer. I've heard a lot of people say that. But on a situation like this, communication is key. I'm not saying you bake the guy, a pumpkin pie for Halloween or something, but you try to get to know him a little better. You try to get a relationship with him, whether it's texting, hey, what you're seeing, or this is what's going on in the neighborhood. But if you can communicate and just start trying to build that relationship with this guy where he respects you, that's the foundation for successful landowners or co-ops, QDMA neighborhoods, whatever you want to call it. But in this situation, sounds like this guy's it may not be able to get there. But if he's coming on your property and he's physically trespassing and he's cutting down trees, I mean, that's unfortunately, you got to ask him to stop. And if you don't, that's where you get the law involved, because that's kind of what that's there for. And you hate for it to come to that. But I mean, if he's physically cutting down trees, timber, he's hurting the value of your property. That's a whole nother issue at large there. But, communication, like I said, I mean, that's with any neighbor, that's with any landowner, and that's with any farmer, anybody you're dealing with that you have to work with on your land or near your land, is just try to get to know them a little better, try to understand them. And, if the guy's been hunting the property his whole life, I'm sure he feels a little bit entitled there. So it definitely sounds like this neighbor voted for Hillary, if I had to guess. But
Bernie.
Or Bernie. That's another story for another day. But
it's unfortunate, and it's a weird deal, because I would venture to say most hunters have dealt with this exact scenario.
Yeah.
And you think, all right, if we've all dealt with it, who is the guy that keeps trespassing, or who's the guy that's on the line? Like, what version of hunter is he?
Well, chances are, if Rob were doing this to the other guy, he would probably feel differently. If he were stepping onto his property,
let me tell you, if Rob was doing it to the other guy would have already called the law. I guarantee.
Probably. Yeah.
And Terry and I have dealt with a similar situation. This is the disheartening part about it. You work your life away to buy a piece of property, right? You find the perfect piece of property that you want. And it's not an easy task. You decide, I'm going to spend a lot of money on this ground. This is what I want to do on this ground. And then what they never tell you is what the landowner next to you is like.
This property comes complete with a neighborhood hillbilly.
So Dad and I ran into the same situation. Of course, the neighbor, like one of the first days we're on it, he comes flying down through the property, telling us about this, that, and the other. He's been hunting there his whole life and blah, 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 blah. And he rides his four-wheeler. He shoots on our property, rides his four-wheeler on our property. We know he does.
Does he ride wheelies?
We got him on trail camera pictures. We've, alerted the authorities. You cannot stop the guy. And in that case, to Jeff's point, what are you going to do? Are you going to continue to escalate the situation?
Mm-hmm.
Not worth it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Especially for us, it's not worth it.
It's almost like these people know that.
Yeah. And so, you can only do so much, but it's unfortunate, because the reality of it is there are people in this world that don't give a flying, about your rights or your, how you feel about it. And they're going to do what they're going to do. That's it.
Yeah.
And this guy certainly seems like that. If he's this brazen to cut trees down and, what could you do?
And the only thing I understand, and Jeff, you alluded to this, it's hard when you've been hunting a piece of ground your whole life and suddenly you can't. So it changes ownership and you can't. But that doesn't give you license to continue. You have to respect the property owner's wish. And so, what you're talking about, Jeff, kind of understanding and getting to know and establishing a relationship, that's an awesome kind of preventative strategy. And then when you're faced with a guy that just flat out won't obey or won't just follow the laws, then you've got to probably pull the police in.
Okay. So we've kind of broke it down from the easy standpoint. So not knowing this guy's property or how many acres, next step, what would you do? I would plant food plots on the other side of the farm, or I would
practically, how would you deal with it?
Yeah, I would try to draw the deer away from that property line best you could, and I would leave it I just wouldn't go over there. Ultimately, that guy is going to do more harm than good on that side of your farm. Now, like I said, it may be 20 acres and that really screws you up.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at a couple hundred acres, you might still have some things that you can do on your farm to help get around his intrusion. Right. Wouldn't you say, Jeff?
Yeah, he's probably his own worst enemy. If this guy's hunting on the line with a shooting house there facing your way, it probably doesn't matter the wind. He's probably hunting whatever, but for sure, you don't want to put any food plots near this guy. You want to keep those on the other end of the property, let that end, grow up or establish you a perimeter. A lot of our properties, that's what we try to do, especially if we got a neighbor that we've had some issues with before, is we'll do a truck path or a four-wheeler path around the entire property. That way you can monitor it. If they're cutting something or if they're dragging deer across or they're trespassing, cutting the fence, whatever, you can see it. So you got to keep an eye on these fence lines, just because that's human nature to wander and stuff like that. But the neighbor we were talking about yesterday, that we was explaining to a couple of younger guys, buddies of ours, who kind of giving them a little lesson on it. But he was as bad as this guy, if not worse. I mean, we've almost come to brawls with this guy in the middle of the dirt road before, and it never came to that, thankfully. But the law has been involved multiple times. It's just a terrible situation. It was, but now him and my dad, they text a lot. They cut some of our hay. I mean, we're really good friends now. But before, and this was as recent as probably 4 or 5 years ago, we were just. It was just about a situation as the caller had or the question had. The guy posing the question had mentioned. I mean, it was that bad, but over time it gotten better with a lot of hard work and, communication through my dad. And now it's beyond anything you would imagine. It's good. So you can't give up on people like this. It's easy to say, hey, I'll sell the property or whatever, but there's ways to tackle it. But it's one of those things that you have to be patient. It takes time. It doesn't change overnight.
Really kind of depends on your personality, I think, because, I don't know that everybody has it in them to kind of turn a blind eye and stick out your hand and try to come, to them and say, hey, well, maybe we can figure something out. Would you guys, be willing to, hey, the property or do that? You got to be a pretty big person to be able to go do that.
And there's a proverb that's about how terrible it is to have a bad neighbor. And if anyone even if you don't own land, you just live in a house and you have a bad neighbor, it can be a living nightmare. So as much as you can do to at least keep some type of civility, and you have to be careful not to do anything that would kind of bring you down to their level. You can't retaliate. You can't set up booby traps. You see there was that one guy that set up a paint bomb.
Yeah.
And had
he got in trouble then.
Yeah, because you can't, there are laws, even if you are trespassing, you still are protected. I laughed too. And I thought, good for that landowner, but
he got in trouble.
Even criminals have rights. And that's kind of a crazy thing in our justice system, but even criminals have rights and you can't harm them. And some people have gotten into trouble.
Yeah. If you haven't Googled that trespassing paint bomb, because that hunter walking through the woods, he's an older guy, gets lit up, and then he's cussing, awesome. And he's like, it's the funniest. It's the funniest video,
and it happened like pre-dawn. So you imagine walking through the woods in the dark, and then boom, and you're covered in all this. I would think I just got shot. Yeah, I'm covered in my own blood.
It's probably not as funny as I'm making it.
No, it's hilarious, but
I know Jeff's had to have seen it before.
I have not. I'm on YouTube as soon as we hang up, though. I can promise you that.
Yeah, it's pretty comical.
Yeah. But thank you, Jeff, for running that through your traps.
Okay, so Jeff, you guys, you've been out duck hunting already, right? You've been elk hunting, You've been deer hunting. We're coming into November. Obviously, there's going to be about 10, 15 days where you all get real. You're already serious, but you're fixing to get real serious real quick. You got to miss Halloween. Tim and I both can relate. When you're a dad, if you're a dad worth anything, you're going to be home for Halloween.
Yeah.
I'd like to say Terry and Mark never were home for Halloween, but whatever.
But it's forgotten. It's bygone.
Never talk about it again. So you're getting real serious starting November 1st, I assume. What's the plan of attack here the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, we'll start, all day sits. A lot of people say, hey, is it time for you guys to start sitting all day? We very rarely sit all day unless we're on a big one that's bedded down with a doe or we know he's in the area. The grind is so long, from September to January that we start pulling these 4 or 5 in a day, all day sits. I mean, we'll just be done. Yeah. So we try to realize it's a marathon, not a sprint. And now if you're going somewhere to hunt 5 or 6 days and that that's all you got, by all means, sit as long as you can, because you're not going to kill him at home watching football. But what we'll start doing, we're hunting to, 11, 12 o'clock, we'll come in. And typically we're getting down because we're moving spots. Very rarely do I hunt somewhere in the morning that I think is going to be good in the evening. Yes, we hunting usually timber funnels, pinch points in the morning, close to bedding areas. And in the afternoon, we're pretty much hunting on the edge of green fields or cornfields. And so that gives us an excuse to get down, go get a sandwich and change spots. And, the wind's moving sometimes too. So you got to be careful about that you don't get so locked into the one spot that you can't be adapted or, be able to move when you have to, because that's what you got to do. You got to keep an open mind and just be ready for things that change, because we're getting a lot of crazy weather changes. And I mean, this front we got coming in now, it's like the wind's changing directions 2 or 3 times. So it's bizarre right now.
Yeah. We had snow this morning, spitting snow when I stepped out the door.
Yeah. And in Iowa, they had, Iowa, Kirksville, North Missouri, that whole area, they had legit some snow. 2 days ago, I think.
I think
yeah, we 2 snows already.
Pretty crazy, really.
In October. And it's like we had no fall. Fall is my favorite season. And we went from summer to like a week or 2 of fall. And now it's wintertime. So it's kind of not frustrating, but I don't really think, in my opinion, this cold weather, everybody thinks, oh man, it's good, let's go hunting. It can be too cold this time of year, in my opinion, because these deer are ready to do their fall ritual.
Yeah.
Their November dance. We need highs in the 50s, something like that, lows in the 30s. But, we're seeing stuff, lows in the teens. The real field this morning was 15 degrees. And the deer just kind of lock up. You have some mornings that they'll still just go nuts. But overall, they're like, what is this white stuff? I'm not used to it, so I'm done with the rut. So it's not really, I'm not excited to see it this time of year. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you.
Yeah, it just shocks them. It's too soon for it, frankly.
Yep.
So,
and I feel that way in November too, but I've never hunted it in October until this year. So that's really bizarre.
Well, we're excited to see if you end up taking down Big Chocolate.
That's the plan. Yeah. That's the plan. Cash picked up his sheds last year, so it's kind of a
good luck
with this deer, and we're ready. So, but we're about to get after it.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule here today, and we're going to let you go and get back to it. But thank you. Good luck. Safe hunting. Tell mom, dad, everybody that we said hello.
Same here, guys. Thanks for your time, and we'll see y'all soon.
All right. See you, buddy.
See you, Jeff.
Bye-bye. All right. So
Jeff's a good guy.
Oh, Jeff's the best.
Very, very patient with trespassing.
Yeah. We've known these guys probably, I don't know, at least a decade or so now, and they've been nothing but great people.
06 is when they joined Dream Season.
Is that when it was? Yeah. So longer than a decade then. Yeah. Nothing but great people, and they deserve all the things that come their way, because they're legitimately as nice as they seem.
Yeah, which is a nice change of pace.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get into it. You had some luck in the woods this weekend, right?
Yeah, and I want to tell a little bit of an embarrassing story that relates to trespassing. It's on topic.
Okay.
And if the guy's listening, I wish I'm apologizing right now.
Oh, great! Yeah. Don't incriminate yourself here, Tim.
I was on my own property, but this guy was hunting near me. And this is back in the days before I had Onyx. This is probably 8 or 9 years ago. And I saw the guy in the morning. He was whistling at me like, hey, I'm over here hunting. And I was
maybe
convinced,
he just thought you looked good.
Well, that's a given. I was convinced he was on my side. It was a smaller suburban tract. I was convinced, based on what the landowner told me, that was her property. Well, he was actually,
you go stick your finger in his chest, and
I was hot because it was like the last day of season.
I'd like to see this.
I have a pretty bad temper, and this guy brought it out of me, and he was so kind, and he was, and I brought a buddy out. He was a military guy. He was back home from a deployment, and I was trying to get him on a deer, and I was like,
oh, I thought you meant you brought the military guy to come take care of this guy.
Take this guy out for me. But he was like, okay, sorry, I didn't realize the property line was here, and he left for the day. And now that I know that he was actually good, and I had booted him out of his
since
stand.
you got your OnX app, you immediately went back to that spot. And you're like, all right, this guy was right here. Wait a second.
I can clearly see like, oh yeah, he is on the neighbor's property. And I feel terrible that I did.
Yeah. I got one for you. So we're hunting over in Illinois, and this is only a couple years ago. We're on a lease, and I think it was a 40-acre lease, maybe 40 or 80 acres. And so in the morning, I head out to the spot. Of course, you had no idea what's around or who's around. This is the first time I had hunted this spot. So in the afternoon, we come out and we're walking out, and I could have sworn that I was seeing on the property line, and this is right next to somebody's house. All right. Granted, It was not a very nice house.
Sure.
Looked like they may be doing something illegal there or whatever.
Like methamphetamines?
Yes. So we're walking back, and I'm seeing, it was during gun season, which is the scariest thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're walking, I'm seeing orange and moving in this little, it looked like an outhouse. I mean, it was tiny, but it had a window, and I'm looking. So we're walking past it. Literally, the road is maybe 50 yards from this.
Okay.
The house is maybe 20 yards from where this little shooting house was. It's literally on the fence line. The only way they could look out was over our property, and there's a lady in there, like maybe in her 60s, hunting, and I'm walking, and she just waved at me. Yeah, she just waved at me as I walked by. I'm like, geez, am I in the twilight zone or what?
The banjos start to play.
The only place she could have shot is on us, that literally, and she was right by the road. She was right by that house. I have no idea. Some people, just to this poor caller's question. Some people have no problems sitting the fence line, and I don't know what she possibly, it was obvious if she was going to shoot something, it was going to be on us, but
sure,
I'm sure she's been doing that for a long time.
And that's kind of the thing. People that live in the same area and have for years, and they know the guy that owned it 50 years ago, and his family owned it, and then his kids finally sold off the place. That happens all the time, and those people just refuse to stop hunting it.
I've been hunting here my whole life.
Yeah, and you're not going to stop me.
Yeah. And so we didn't pick that lease up. I did kill a deer there, though. I killed a deer there 2 years in a row.
Hey,
and then EHD hit it. Yeah, and we didn't pick it back up. But just bizarre. There's bizarre things happen. We were, one time we were turkey hunting. I was a young kid, and we were on a pretty big piece of ground in Bloomsdale that my Uncle Marvin owned. And we knew nobody should have been. So Dad's calling turkeys, and we're with our late friend, Bill Carl. And we're hunting where Dad's calling, we set up, we're on a bird, and he's calling. All of a sudden we hear kaboom. So Dad gets up and he sprints off, and Bill's filming the whole thing. And this is on the Super VHS days. I mean, a big camera. Yeah. We're running, and we're all running. And I'm like 8.
I don't know what to do. I'm just going to go.
I'm here. But
I got your back, Dad.
It was some kid that, he's probably in his 20s and just, he got in a lot of trouble. Nothing with the law or anything like that. But we told, Uncle Marvin, and he contacted, it was a neighboring landowner's grandson or kid or whatever. Okay. And he was trespassing, and it's just one of those things, man. So,
most people have stories about running into trespassers.
The scary part is you're talking, it's one thing with bow and arrow, but you talk firearms, no matter what the season, it's scary. I mean, that's the identify your target part. And it just, if they're willing to trespass, what else are they willing to do?
Right.
What
I don't understand is if I were trespassing and hunting, I just wouldn't be able to enjoy myself. I would be so nervous
but you
the
have
whole
a conscience.
time. Maybe that's the difference.
I mean, there's a difference. There's just the reality of it is this isn't there. Everybody's not great in this world. And that's I
ran into a lady that was trespassing one time on a property I hunted in St. Louis County. She literally said, well, you can't own the earth.
Yeah. Well, I can and I do, and this is mine.
The law would say otherwise, so I'm sorry. You'll have to leave.
All right, so take me through it. How'd Sunday go? You killed 2 deer.
Sunday, I'm back on the property that I've hunted pretty heavily for the past probably 10 years.
Yeah.
And the deer density is insane. Like there's way too many deer for the carrying capacity out there. I just recently resecured rights to it and hunted out there Friday. Didn't see much.
Immediately went in and started.
Oh yeah, 100%. I pulled stands from my bourbon farm and redeployed them at this other location, and I was hanging my stand and had does and a spike buck walking around me, just kind of what's going on over here.
This guy's new,
right?
Then I shot him.
I haven't seen this guy in a couple of years, and then probably 15 minutes into once the stand was hung and I'm up there, a doe comes walking by. I hit her, and then around 6:30, another doe came walking by because I had a couple doe. I love shooting does. We eat a lot of venison, and my wife was like, "We're out of ground venison. We need to fill the freezer again." And I tell you what, like it was just nice to have deer within range.
Yeah,
I haven't been able to shoot a deer yet this year because I just haven't had an opportunity.
Yeah,
and you start to question like,
am I a good hunter?
Can I really do this? Like, am I a good hunter? And if a deer shows up, can I execute the shot?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes. I can. I just needed a little affirmation of that.
Good for you. Because I'm currently in the boat where I'm not so sure.
It's such a head game. You know, it's such a mind game to play. And when it finally happens, you're like, okay, yeah. Now I'm ready. And I like shooting a couple does early on because that helps me settle down, get back into my shot sequence and be ready for
Dad talks about that all the time. He's like, you need to shoot a couple does, get some practice, and then you're ready for when the time comes. So
100%.
He talks about that quite a bit.
What I'm not used to, because last year, pretty much my entire bow hunting career, I've shot about 62 pounds. And we've talked about this, me humble bragging that I went up to 70 pounds this year.
Obviously.
I might evolve.
It's Tony Stark in it.
Yeah, check this out.
Iron Man.
What's that? It's a big bicep I'm making.
Yeah, okay.
But it's kind of a sword that cuts two ways because the arrow zips through the deer so fast that unless you watch it on replay, you start to wonder like, did I really hit that deer? Because it just cruised right through them. So and then the one deer was a total pass through, and the arrow was just wet. There was no like residual blood on it. It was just moist.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, I went almost through front to back, like high shoulder through lung. I clipped the back lobe of the far lung, liver, guts, and then out through her legs, like almost through the entire deer. And it was just wet. So
pretty strange.
Yeah. And there was no blood trail because part of the intestine clogged up the exit wound.
Makes it tough.
Which we talked about that before that can happen.
Yeah.
But I knew where she was down.
What DeerCast tracks
40 yards. Go get your deer.
Okay. There you go.
When you go end to end on a deer, it's pretty solid. So, and then the nocturnal helped me find the other deer, because that was a high shoulder shot. She was kind of quartering to me, and it punched just past that kind of the edge of the shoulder blade, which is kind of hard to push through. I got probably 8 inches of penetration, but that was both lungs and part of the stomach and liver. Like her guts were filled with stomach content. I didn't think it got that deep, but it did. So, but there was no exit wound, and she went tearing off. But you see that nocturnal glowing, and there was no blood trail. So I turned off my lights and was looking around by the pond where I last saw her. I saw that little red light down in the creek bed. I was like, yeah sweet.
Yeah. Nice.
Plus I get my arrow back because I was concerned that she'd take off with my arrow in it. Yeah. So
congratulations.
Thank you. I try to remind myself I should congratulate myself at midnight that evening when I'm finishing up getting all the meat deboned and in the fridge.
And you had to work the next morning.
Yep. Yeah. Still show up bright and early.
So,
but
it's a long night.
It's a ton of work. Last night, my wife surprised me. I came home and she actually started packaging up the ground venison that I had done and putting it in freezer paper. And I was like, I wasn't expecting you to do that, but thank you. because
That's pretty nice.
Buttload of work.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Now she's still got another probably 12 pounds to do, but
Yeah.
probably do it together.
Nice. Well, I'm glad someone's having some success.
Yeah. And so you're having success at seeing your buck.
If only seeing was killing, but it is not.
It's making for a lot of great encounters.
Yeah, I've had 7 now. It's embarrassing. Let's be honest.
It's going to make for an awesome story.
You know, this deer that we've talked about in the previous podcast, 2S2, we had him the first night this is beginning of October, I think, at 60 yards, I think.
Yep.
Second night, comes to 45. I elect not to shoot him. He was quartering 2 most of the way, and then he briefly gave me a broadside, but I elected not to shoot him, thinking he would come closer. It was like 6 o'clock in the evening, early, and he turned around facing away and walked straight away. The very next time we hunted, he shows up to our total opposite side, but he comes within 30 yards, quartering 2 the whole way again, like straight facing us. And then I was hunting out of a muddy bull blind that we had just moved to this radish plot this summer. And I opened a window, vertical window, move it, apparently not far enough over. I go to draw. He turns and gives me opens his shoulder up and turns enough.
It was beautiful.
It was. He may have been more like 20, 25 yards. He was right there. And I go to draw back. Boom. My tact cam hits the window. He spooks. We talked about this before.
Yeah.
Well, since then, he's never been back to that food plot, which I kind of
wonder why.
I think we answered a question about this on one of the podcasts.
Yeah, if you spook a buck, will it come back?
Yeah. Well, so we sat there again. You know, this isn't like consecutive days in a row. This is over a few weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
Get the right wind, go back in there. We see him about 400 or 500 yards to our east in the beans. He had come out, in a different section of the area that we're hunting, but he's still coming out of the same timber.
Sure.
So I think after that time, that was number 4. For number 5, we elect to sit this muddy soft side blind that I have over on that side of the farm that would have been east of where he came out.
Yeah.
So I felt like, all right, I just need a west wind. We got a perfect west wind. I sat that spot. Sure enough, he comes out 55 yards and then walks away through the beans. So there's one little section of timber, like a finger of timber there, like a point between my muddy soft side blind and my muddy bull blind. And this is, 1,000 yards, at least 1,000 yards probably. So we hung a set. Scott hung a set right in the middle of this, right in this little finger. Mm-hmm. And I needed a northeast wind to sit it, and it blew out over the beans. And I felt like, hey, if he keeps coming out here, we're going to have him. So we hang and hunt that day. Didn't see him. We hunted the next day out of that spot. Didn't see him. And then it was like a couple days later, I thought, you know what? I don't know what's happening on this radish plot. We do have another, shooter in the area. Let's go see what's happening over here. So we go to sit the muddy bull where I originally spooked him. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, he comes out and he is coming from the other timber, walking right past our stand.
Sure. And why not?
Yeah. So we sit there. 2 nights ago, Dad convinced me that we should try a decoy with a real shoulder mount head on it.
Yeah.
And so I had I have 5 mounts here. I have 5 shoulder mounts total. And it's hard to I didn't want to pick any of them, but it's like, all right, I'm desperate to try
something. It's kind of a sacrifice. Yeah.
So I had it's probably a 135 inch deer, 10 point. I was like, all right, let's try this one. So Scott, gets his carpenter belt out and he
did a good job.
He did.
On it.
And he put this thing together. We put it out there. And that night we did have a couple of young bucks. We're sitting in that tree stand in the point, and we had a couple of young bucks, some does come up to it. The young bucks that came up to it, they worked in perfectly, but we put it out I think the mount had scent attached to it because it's been in my office for 15 years. It smelled, I think.
Of failure.
So it was a scent of failure. So as soon as they'd circle them to get face to face, they'd freaking take off.
Yeah.
So the next night, and then it poured on us when we got out of the stand. It was pouring on us. So we're, I'm holding the head and my bow, he's holding the body, and we're walking through this
walk of shame.
Yeah, walking back to the buggy and getting out of there. So then that was 2 nights ago. So last night, supposed to rain. It was raining all day. The weather's been nasty. Pretty horrible, nasty. But we could have sat the Muddy Bull. We could have set that saw side and been out of the elements. But I thought, all right, we haven't seen him here in a couple nights, and I know he's in here. Let's sit that point again. And sure enough, right at last light, and I thought they'd move great all evening. So did Scott. It just felt like it. It was misty, foggy. I just felt like all right, this front's coming through, snow's coming. They're going to come out to these beans and they're going to carb up, And it wasn't until the last, few minutes of daylight. We had seen a few little does and young bucks and stuff like that. And one popped out right underneath us and earlier, but then right there at last light, of course, like they always do, all movement started. A few more mature does pop out of this timber. All of a sudden, here comes to us too. He pops out. And at this point, we have a little button buck in front of us, and a doe had finally worked down in front of us. I'm talking like 20 yards, and they're close to where they're going to get downwind of us, but there was no wind. And we had infield ozone running. We had washed our clothes the night before. We're ozoned up, and doing the best we can to be scent free, but you just never know. So he sees this doe and he commits, and he literally is on a dead walk down this, edge, I call it a road. It's just the edge of the field. And he's on this, he's literally going to walk right in front of us. It
looks like a sure thing.
And we got maybe 4 minutes of light. You know what I mean? Like it's right there at the end of legal shooting light.
Yep.
And plus it was so overcast. I mean, that made it even worse.
Sure.
So here he's coming. All of a sudden, doe starts stomping. That's in front of us. And I don't know what it was, if she smelled us or caught our track or I have no idea what it was exactly. I turned on he turned on a camera. I turned on a camera. Maybe it was that. I have no idea, a little buzz sound.
Cause you just want her to die.
Basically. So she's stomping. He stops in his track, puts his head up, looks around, and then just slowly walks away back to where he came from. And that's the 7th time I've seen him. And I wanted to freaking I'm like, oh, what?
I'm done.
I've gotten more aggressive on this deer than I ever have.
Yeah.
I've tried to employ new tactics. Hang and hunt. We put out a decoy. We've called a little bit yesterday and rattled a little bit, like trying everything I know how to do. We're in the right spot. It's just not working out so far. So
it's a good reminder of how awfully difficult it is to kill a mature deer.
Yeah. I mean, this is at least a 5-year-old, if not a 6-year-old deer. I mean, you see the body on this thing. He's a big bodied deer.
Yeah.
And he's just smart.
He's got that sixth sense.
He does. So, I don't know. I got the permission slip from my wife to hunt in the morning. And so tomorrow morning we got the right wind to hunt a timber set that I've not been in yet this year, waiting for the right time. Got a perfect wind for it.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to give it a shot tomorrow. It's in the timber where he's at. It's a little bit further away from where he's coming out, but it's not that far away. I mean, it's very plausible that he's right in there in the morning somewhere. So we're going to give it a shot and see how we do.
Well, you and I will both be out, I think, in the morning. So we'll have to keep each other apprised of what happens. But this is the time to be out. Like,
it is.
It's getting crazy and it's time to start logging time in the stand.
I probably won't. And here we're, this is the St. Louis region. So we're right there in the smack dab in the middle of the Midwest. But looking ahead at the DeerCast, it really looks like the 5th through the 9th, which is the premium time. Especially if you're a rut hunter, you like hunting the rut, which some guys don't, because it's pretty unpredictable. But the weather is lining up really well for the 5th through the 9th. The moon's not bad. It's going to be a pretty good week, I believe. So better be saving up those vacation days. And
no doubt.
Well, there's no saving at this point. You better just
burn them if you got them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Finish him. So that's what's happening.
All right.
So if we don't do a podcast next week, it's because we're both hunting.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do one remote.
Yeah, we'll just log in via Skype and show people an empty woods.
Yeah, an empty.
There's nothing happening here.
Yeah, exactly. And the other part is, if I could have gotten it done earlier, like I got a tag for Illinois. Well, I'm going to get a tag for Illinois when I go over there to archery hunt. And, like I would have loved to have say, okay, I'm done in Missouri and now I'm going to spend
Roll
the 5th
on.
through the 9th in Illinois. Not the case currently, unless something magical happens tomorrow morning.
You got a lot of plans like, well, if I get this tag
Yeah.
punched, maybe because my mom wants to deer hunt. She's never hunted in her life. And she's like, she said, I would like to spend that time with you.
That's nice.
And I was like,
you think she'd know you better. By now.
well, she's had 40 years to figure it out, but I got her snowballed. But she's gonna go out, and so we'll see what we can make happen.
That's
but
awesome.
I have no idea how it's gonna go.
So now, is she gonna try to hunt?
Yeah. I told her, I was like, we'll set you up with the AR and see how it goes.
That's pretty awesome.
So stay tuned.
Yeah. So the Missouri season, firearm seasons, is it the weekend of the 16th?
I think so. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Got to get her to the range and everything.
Yep.
So it could be an adventure or a misadventure.
I look forward to hearing about it on the podcast. As we saw with Grandma Lucy, it can be both.
Yeah, no doubt.
So,
well, let's save our wildlife word then for next week.
I know we're running long.
We've gone a little long, but appreciate everyone listening in. Thank you to Rob for sending in the question. Just thanks in general for people that listen. It's fun. Every now and again, we get emails and texts from people, and it's nice to hear feedback, whether it's great or not. we just like to know that people are listening, and it makes a difference.
I like all the juries except Matt,
the worst one. He shall go unnamed.
Yes.
All right. Well, stay tuned. We'll continue to have updates through deer season and entertain and inform as best we can.
Happy Halloween for those that are going out tonight.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you guys.
Okay. Gonna need you to go ahead and work this weekend.
I know. You keep saying that.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV is brought to you by OnX Hunt, the nation's #1 GPS hunting app.